Greetings. Welcome to Conversation with Tony Mobley. Today is May 13th, 2026. This is episode 17 of 2026 of Conversation with Tony Mobley. This conversation is about the end of the school year, and I have an educational panel for that conversation. This conversation uses the TV broadcast software Mimo Live. We also use Zoom. ConversationswithTonyMobley.com is our website. And we are using Mukana, which is in the YouTube chat, courtesy of Alex Lindsay and 090. It allows us to ask questions. Those questions can be voted up or down. If you choose not to use Mukana, the link is in the YouTube chat. If you choose not to use Mukana, well, you can just use the YouTube chat. And we are going to get started right away. But first, let me introduce our panel for tonight. Our panel for tonight includes Miss Carissa Worthy, Rabbi David Paskin, and Mrs. Emily Russo. I want to say welcome, panel. Thank you so much. And we'll just start with Carissa. You can say hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. All right. Rabbi David Paskin.
Hey ho, how are you, Tony?
I'm fine, sir. Glad to see you.
Glad to
Mrs.
see you.
Emily Russo.
Hi, Tony. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good.
All right, we're going to get started. I just want to encourage educators, parents, students, ask your questions tonight. This is a great panel to ask your question. Very diverse, a lot of educational experience, private, public, corporate education. So we're going to get started. What do you see happening with students emotionally, academically in these final weeks of school? And I'm just going to ask the panel just to start sharing. I'm not going to call on anybody. I want you to respond to the question. So,
Can I respond to the question with a question?
sure.
All right, so this is a question for Carissa and Emily, and for you maybe if you want. I'm every time there's a break, kids lose a little bit, of course, like especially summer break, that's completely natural. I'm wondering if you feel like lately the regression has been greater after shorter periods of time than it has been in the past. Because I'm feeling that a little bit.
Carissa, Emily.
Um, I don't know that I would say I feel like it has been more. I'm in assessment in my county, so I do look at a lot of data and we do see some regression with our students, but I don't know that I've noticed it more now than before.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Emily.
unfortunately, I can't speak to the current situation other than what I hear from my educator friends because I haven't been in the classroom since 2021, um, other than to do volunteer work. So, like seeing the kids, and of course, they see me as the fun lady who's going to come in and do tech stuff, not the teacher who's going to make me do things, which, has its own pluses and minuses. But yeah, I can't really speak to how, if it's grown or gotten worse or anything like that. So,
I guess I was asking Tony because to answer your question of in these final weeks of school, where are kids and beyond that, what should we do to help them in this upcoming long break? Uh, I'm wondering if we have to think differently about this time of year nowadays. If I don't know, it's a thought.
What do
to
you
that, oh, go ahead,
Go ahead.
Tony.
Go ahead, Emily. No,
I
go
was
ahead,
just going to
Emily.
say to that point, I think thinking differently about education, how we approach education, been long overdue. But especially around breaks, like I taught high school English and theater and tech classes. And then I, work with kids in tech, STEM projects and things like that. And putting those more hands-on projects before a break where they actually get to apply some of the things they've learned and instead of trying to squish something in before they're going to be off for an extended amount of time, really is what we need to be focusing on instead of trying to, oh, we have 6 more lessons in the reading book that we have to get through by this date. So let's just push through as fast and as hard as we can. Bringing some of that wonder and like allowing organic thought to occur, thinking to occur, critical thinking to occur is definitely, especially with, the introduction of AI, we really need to start rethinking how we think about what does it mean to learn something and what is important to learn. And is it, 8 lessons in the vocabulary reading book, or is it how to figure out how I can figure out what words would be more appropriate in this situation or to describe something, or, just I think we get very focused on a curriculum, or like there's things that need to be done in this many weeks. And sometimes that's just not realistic, especially when you don't counter in state testing or extended breaks or even short, like long weekends around things where the kids, if you try to squish it in, they're just not, it doesn't take hold the way it does if you allow it to organically come about in the classroom. So,
I was just going to say, 50 years ago, this coming weekend, I graduated from high school. And the only reason that I mention it is because I had the benefit of attending a private high school that was project based. It was project based. And I have to say, in answer to your question, I think that I have learned, let me say it a different way. I think that because of the projects as well as the academics, that both have enhanced my life in such a way that I've been able to carve out a great life in terms of the different occupations that I've had. And it's because I've had those, I pull on the academic as much as I pulled on the project base. I mean, I think that I don't want to go into all of the things that I've done as far as the project based part of it, but almost everything that I've done as far as my employment has had both components of both project and academic that have embraced or supported me in my career choices. And so to sort of speak to that, I don't think that current students, and I've been out of the classroom now 13 plus years, but I don't think that because of COVID, it has impacted the attention that students have, and they lose a lot, not just because of the break, but because of the so many different distractions that they have. I mean, the distractions are nonstop. And I think that we get overwhelmed, but for them, it's part of who they are. But it's still a distraction.
Tony, can I throw
So
another
I
sort of
don't
dichotomy?
know if I answered your question.
Can I throw another dichotomy into you were just talking about sort of holding up academics and hands-on experiential
Project-based,
sort
yes.
of
Yes.
project-based learning. I'd like to offer a different parallel. Not to not to reject yours at all, but in our school, we think about academics and we think about character growth or character development. And, we know that kids regress in their academics a little bit over vacations. As I said before, it's natural. What I'm afraid we're going to see more of now, maybe not, is a regression in that character development. And don't get me wrong, because I am also one of those awful, terrible parents. When my kids were younger, I was that awful, terrible parent that I'm sure the teachers talked about. But I look at my parents who do not reinforce that character development, that character growth that we've worked so hard on in this educational setting, that I'm also afraid that they're going to lose that. They're going to regress in that respect somewhere, which to me at least is even more important than any academic regression they may suffer.
I think that's societal though. I really think it's societal though. I don't think that it's just education. I think that's across the board. If you, we're not really trying to have a political conversation tonight, but as far as it being something that students have to grapple with, I think society as a whole is grappling with it, and so we have to kind of embrace, what you're doing at your school. I think in terms of individual communities, I don't know how that you do that necessarily in a public school setting. I think that's a community thing that you have to kind of push. I'm happy that in your school you were able to do that, but I really think that's a societal thing. That is not. I don't think that is something that we could ask a public school to enforce intentionally, but maybe the teachers can. Teachers have always been able to impact their communities in a major way. 'Cause the fact of the matter is that in the past, the school was the centerpiece of the community. There are no ifs and buts about that. And so I'm going to stop talking. I'm just going to ask Emily and Carissa if they want to add on to your conversation.
I would just add on, I agree with David that both aspects are important. There are some components to the social and character building that we do have within the public schools. It's social emotional learning that's incorporated within the day for structures for teachers. Some may do it a little bit more than others, but I think there is a small component for that building of social, emotional, and character for the students along with academics.
Yay. I'm going to say yeah. I'm saying yay to that because I was not aware. So, Emily, please.
Social emotional learning's been big, right? I think it had its moment just before COVID actually started, where, people were putting a lot into like CASEL learning and things where there was supports around like, okay, it's not just about academic learning, it's also about how to self-regulate. It's also about how to have a conversation with another person without, throwing things or being, nasty, and how to build those skills. And I think that to your point, yes, it is societal in the sense of there are a lot of structures that in the past were silently agreed upon, I'm going to say, among people in society. Like, I know when I was growing up, one time I came up my street at my parents' house, it's a 25. I think I was doing like 35. My neighbor called my dad at work and told him, you know, like, your daughter was driving too fast and there's kids on this street and she needs to be aware. And my dad didn't yell at the neighbor. He talked to me about why that was unsafe, right? And why, and I remember being upset about with my neighbor because like, "Ah, snitch, why is he like telling on me?" You know, that kind of thing. But also at the same time, like, I appreciate that. Whereas like in this day and age, it's more mind your business. Don't tell me how to raise my kid. Don't tell me what, you know, like, you're not their parent. I'll do what I want. And I'm not saying that it's always angry or aggressive, but then some of those attitudes filter down to the kids in a, you don't have to tell me how to act, or I don't need to self-regulate. And those things do tend to, without reinforcement, throughout school. And I think, you know, K through 12, it has to be continuously reinforced that it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be frustrated. This is how you deal with that. It's okay not to know something. This is how you deal with that. It's okay to, you know, have a bad day, but you don't take it out on everybody else. You know, like, all of those behaviors or skill sets that we need as functioning adults, you know, are being reinforced in public school. There is a little bit of attack on it. I do know that a lot of my corporate clients have dialed back talking about SEL, because it gets interpreted as being associated with DEI, or, you know, whatever they want to, you know, be upset about for whatever day of the week it is. But those things are being put into the background again, and not being the focus of, or in a balance with, the academic
Mm.
situation. And I think that that's sad. You know, it's really difficult to regulate in this day and age. Like, I can't tell people enough how glad I am that the internet did not exist when I was growing up, because like, I don't know that I would have been able to handle what some of these kids handle on a day-to-day basis. Um, Whether it's just seeing things and comparing themselves to something, or worse, like cyberbullying, or, you know, everybody knowing your business because it can spread so fast. Um, you know, that kind of thing. It just, that's a lot to deal with. And I think the adults in the room need to provide the skills, to the students to help them with those situations that they aren't as sympathetic to. They can, you know, like, they haven't experienced it themselves, so they can't, you know, oh, it's not that bad. And it's like, no, no, really, it is that bad. So,
There's a fatal flaw, Emily, with what you just said about that's what the adults in the room need to, you know,
yeah,
assuming that the adults in the room
adults
can
know
you know,
how
I
to.
was just talking to my wife actually before we jumped on. I was saying to her that I've been amazed how in the past, not even year, less than a year, the language that is now used on newscasts, broadcast newscasts in prime time, they're using foul language left and right. Now, granted, a lot of the times they're quoting a certain someone, but nonetheless, you know, they used to bleep or, you know, make veiled
Absolutely.
references to those things,
Yeah.
and they don't anymore. And that to me has you know, how are our kids supposed to learn what to do or what not to do when, as Emily said, what you know, the adults who are supposed to teach them, we don't even, we're not even doing it. We're not even cutting it.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Wow.
it's and so yes, there's the internet piece of this. I don't know. There's also, as you've been saying over and over, Tony. We just live in a very very different time than when we were growing up. You and I. It's just very very different.
Yeah. We're gonna go to our next question. Thank you all so much. Dan Huber of Erie, Pennsylvania asks, "What AI initiatives should higher education prioritize?"
Um, I can kind of sort of think through this one. I don't know that I have an answer, but I do know, and I've said this before on the show, is AI literacy definitely needs to be a focus. Understanding how it works, why it works, what it does. Um, but I think when it comes to AI initiatives at higher ed, I think, you know, planning for the future, upskilling, that it's understanding that things are changing so fast. Jobs are changing so fast. I went from a company
Mhm.
that was completely anti-AI in 2023 to you're required to use it in 2026. Um, the so having those skills to know how to use it, to be able to discern fact from fiction, whether or not it's hallucinating, whether or not it's doing the thing that you're asking it to do, I think is really important at the higher ed level. And I also think as we get more into using AI, I think one of the big takeaways that higher ed and needs to, well, I guess higher ed and educators at the higher ed level need to take away from it is that we're getting to the point where research isn't being done at the level that it was being done before because there's too much reliance on the AI to do the research. And eventually we're going to hit that dead internet theory, right? Like everything's just going to repeat itself and regurgitate itself because it's not being filled with new information. And so I think those skills that I see and plan for with my clients are like, how do we look at education differently? So instead of asking a student to write an essay, how do we teach them to discern and critically think about an essay that's already been written and then write their own rebuttal to it or agreement along with it, or do those things that make them critically think about what they're doing so that they'll have the ability to make those decisions when they're using the tools. But also the efficacy of research, I really think is in danger right now. It is just a very scary thing to think about when you read some of the stuff that's been retracted recently, things that have been brought to light where the research isn't as deep or as wide as they thought it was because they were using bad information. Um,
Mhm.
so I think for higher ed, especially research institutions, I think that's the direction that needs to um, be focused and put a light onto.
Anybody else?
I'll just second what she said, and then I'll throw it to Carissa. I agree with you 100% that research is where we're going to be struggling. I do think that AI can play a part in research, and what I mean by that is I'm not thinking about higher education. I'm thinking about little kids. We had I was doing a project with some early elementary kids, and it was work that I would need them to do research about, and it wasn't the kind of research where I could give them a couple of books that they could use as resource. They really needed to kind of be on the web, but of course I wanted them to search safely, and so what I did is I built an AI tool that they could ask questions of, and then I gave it the answers that it should provide to them. It wasn't out searching the web for those answers, but and so what that I think what that was teaching them was that researching is really about asking good questions. So they weren't accessing materials in the traditional way, but they were asking the questions in the traditional way. But I agree with you 100%. Goodness, when we were, when we needed to know something when we were growing up, we had to go to the library. Like, can you imagine that? Or at the very least, we had to. I mean, forget. I was using the card catalog, but at the very least, my kids had to actually know how to find information and then discern that information. and categorize that information and you know and filter that information. Nowadays, even though they still should be doing that, because the AI is so certain, or they think that the AI is so certain, they're not doing that work, and that's Emily's just totally right. That's so critical.
I guess I want to say that in response to Dan's question, I really think that we have to emphasize that AI is a tool, that we have to continue to look at it as a tool and not the end and all of itself. That's not, we have to use it as a resource to actually get the work done and not let it be the answer. And I think that that's part of the way in which we have to look at it. Carissa, were you about to say something?
I was just going to say I don't necessarily work with higher learners with AI. We do, most of mine is around the little kids as well, and our middle and high school students a little bit, but more so with elementary more than them. But it, like you said, it is a tool that can be used. We oftentimes use it for research, for students to do something if they're doing something project based. That is a tool that they can use. Some of the programs that or AI that we have, we can kind of tailor it a little bit, as David said, so that kids aren't just, getting a whole bunch of information that they don't need. And then also, I think for us within our district, AI is becoming more of a requirement. So we are doing a lot of training with the adults before, as it trickles down to the students, so that the adults know how to use the tool so that they're better able to aid the kids with using the tool. Because oftentimes I do see like we're having a program within our department, and teachers had to come up with with an assessment, and some of it you could truly tell that it was AI. They didn't vet it. You could tell that they didn't put in like correct prompts because the answers that they were giving for those questions like wasn't correct, didn't make sense. So teaching the adults how to use the tool so that they can help the kids.
Wow.
Yeah, and just to add one thing that's more of a positive note on the AI initiatives, like the one thing that I have seen work really well is agents created specifically for universities that help students, especially first generation students, navigate the system. So they have, I think it was the University of Georgia. I could be wrong. It might be the Georgia Tech, but one of them put a bot in place 2-3 years ago, and it was specifically geared to reduce dropout rate and to reduce the kids that fall through the cracks because they don't know how to navigate the system, because they aren't legacy students. They don't have parents that have attended school, and they have seen great success with students being able to navigate financial aid, being able to navigate how to apply, find the courses that they need. How do I do things? And it's just an agent that was created and lives, I can't remember, it has a fun name, but it lives on the site, and any student can access it and get the information that they need. So I think leaning too into that with all higher ed situations where they're trying to create personalized learning that's actually personalized, right? Like I'm going into this program and I don't know what I should do next, or I'm not sure, my advisor gave me these 3 courses and they're all full. What should I do instead? But those kind of, safe spaces to ask those questions to get the support that they need at that higher level, higher ed level. So.
And by the way, if we're talking about higher education, we should also bring in what's it called? TED Ed, whatever they call it. The
TED Ed.
TED Khan Academy. No, the Khan TED Academy. I think it's Khan TED, whatever. It's the new Khan Academy TED Talk University thing that they're doing, which is we've talked a little bit on the rundown about, and it has the potential to really change the nature of higher education. And So I think that's also fascinating.
Absolutely. We have a question from a panel member. So David Paskin is asking, can Carissa talk a little bit about how testing has changed or is changing?
Oh, testing. As we conclude with our GMAS testing for the last 3 weeks. Um, I can speak for our district for Fulton in Atlanta, in the Atlanta area, that we have quite a bit of testing, whether it be on the district level or within the school buildings. There is a lot more testing than I think when I was in school. We know we had our standard tests that we knew we would take throughout the school year, but now it's just sometimes it's like testing overload. So
Mm.
we're kids may take a daily exit ticket. They may consider that, like a test. They take weekly tests. They take a unit assessment test, and then they're taking the big test at the end of the school year. So testing definitely has changed. I feel like it's a lot more of it, on all levels, whether it's, state, the district, or within the school buildings that, it's like we're testing to get ready for the big test, and it could be a lot. And as I said, we just concluded with 3 weeks worth of GMAS, Georgia Milestones testing. So like that burnout that we talk about with the kids, they are truly now burned out because it was all the prepping testing for the test. And so now that the test is done, they're like, we're done. And truly they aren't, because we still have other tests that we have to do for the Georgia legislation, for the reading dyslexia legislation. So they're still testing now for that has to be, it's required 3 times a year. So they're doing their end of year testing for that. Just witnessed it yesterday in the building. So it's really testing overload.
God, am
Wow.
I glad I'm in a private school. That
Wow.
just sounds horrendous.
Yeah. It also makes you want to ask questions about, is this actually for them to retain the information, or is it for them to pass the test? I don't want anybody to speak to that, but I'm just wondering, out loud, what what is the nature of why that is necessary? Because if it's not, if it's just to do the activity and they are not able to pull from it in the future as a resource, then why?
Can I add on something?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Um, and I say testing overload. I think one thing that we need to think about and consider is how can we get the same information instead of putting a piece of paper or putting the kid on a device to answer questions. What other forms can we use or methods can we use to get that same information that may not require them to, sit at a device or do pencil paper tests? There are other things that can be done. We just have to, think outside the box and be creative. I know that there are tests that are required that we have to do, but if it's not something where they have to sit at a desk and, pencil paper or on a device, I think we should consider being, finding other creative ways to get that same, because we need the data to know where students are, but, trying to find other different creative ways to get it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Our next question is, how much structure does a student summer actually need? Where is the line between enrichment and burnout? We kind of already talked about that a little bit, but what's your thoughts on this whole idea of enrichment and burnout during the summer for our students?
Well, for the students, I absolutely think the more you push as a parent or even as an educator, put like for summer school into making it like the school year, or like this is an assignment, or we're going to do this thing. The more you do that, the more resistance you're going to get. And the kids do need more of a downtime, more of a break from that kind of structure. But I think, and my philosophy has been, because I've taught summer school for, I don't know, 8 years. Every year that I taught, no, actually probably 14 years, 13, 14 years. Um, the the kids, like if they're just coming to school during the summer, they shut down. They're not going to perform. They are like, this is boring. So coming up with more creative ways to engage students, whether they're in summer school or in the home, like it's more about inspiring wonder and letting them guide some of that learning. Like asking them what they're thinking about, like what are you into right now, and how does that apply to these skills that I can teach you to do or continue to like coach you through without making it feel like, hey, here's a homework, here's an assignment, we're going to do read aloud, we're going to do this in class. I think that that's really the key. Like finding that balance is letting some of the wonder grow instead of being pushed down as it tends to get in a lot of classroom, like standard traditional classroom time.
Okay. Anybody else?
I would say going into summer that the burnout is real for everyone, the students, the teachers, and the parents. I do agree with more project-based or exploring. Um, it can be something as simple as cooking at home, like having the
Mhm.
kid to measure. You can incorporate fractions into that, just little simple things. If you're traveling, could be social studies, geography lesson there. So just the little simple things that you could do to help. Kids are still learning, but it's not a sit down and do this at a desk type structure. I think that would help.
Oh, and
You,
Pizza
you
Hut
know,
brought back the reading thing this summer. So you can get your pizza. You got to do your reading and you get your free pizza at the end of the summer. So there's always the
Who?
incentive too.
Okay. Who brought that back?
Pizza Hut.
What's the Pizza Hut? Okay.
Yeah, the Pizza
Okay.
Hut. Yeah, they used to do a summer reading program where you like read books and you wrote them down and then you get rewarded with a personal pizza. And they're bringing it back this year. So
That's very, very cool.
you know what you just made me think of, Chris, as you were speaking, that how um, the idea of teaching our children is this really is our fault. It's the teacher's fault. We have taken from parents a sense of responsibility to teach their children. We've taught the parents to drop their kids at school in the morning, pick them up in the afternoon, suffer through homework if you have to. But the teachers they'll teach them. School will teach them. Don't worry, you don't have to do that. We really have sort of taught our parents that. And so what that has meant is that when they do go on trips or when they are in the kitchen, parents don't even think that the kid can be the navigator. Give the kid a map and let them, north, south, east, west, or when they're in the kitchen, as you said, make sure that you have kid-friendly knives in the kitchen, or whatever it is. I think in some ways, we've trained parents to not think about how every moment can be a moment of learning. And it's such a shame. You're right, what you just shared.
Well, I think on behalf of the teachers, I will say that not only have that that is the case. The other thing too is that the teacher is not just teaching. The teacher is actually being the social worker. The teacher is being the therapist. The teacher is being
For
the
sure.
counselor. I mean, all of those roles, that were part of the parent's responsibility has shifted. And depending on the community that you're talking about, it may be even a deeper dive in terms of what the responsibility of the teacher is in that particular community. So, in a sense, it's sort of, you can easily understand the burnout of the teacher because of the responsibilities that they uphold. And some parents actually, you know, expect the teachers to hold on to those responsibilities. And so it's a and that also sort of speaks to the whole thing about why there are so many teachers that are leaving the the market, the profession, because of all of that kind of thing. Um, David, you're shaking your head. You want to add some more to that?
No, I just think you're right on target. You're absolutely right. I
So
mean, the only other thing I'll add is that to what kids should be doing in the summer. Forgive me, Emily, but summer school just sounds like punishment to me. And so
100%.
yeah, okay. I just want my kids, I don't care how old they are. I want them running around outside. I want them swimming. I want them finding bugs or blowing stuff up and, like science experiment. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
I want them doing everything Carissa said. I want them cooking and traveling and doing all that stuff.
Yeah, I think, growing up, I had, people in my life, my grandmothers specifically taught me how to cook, how to knit, how to sew. My dad didn't have any sons, so he was like, "Hey, I have to install this oven. I need you to come over here." And like, you don't just sit there and hold it. You're watching what he does. And then when your turn comes, you're like, "Yeah, I'm not afraid of this. I've done this before, right?" So that everyday involvement and like, sometimes it's annoying and you don't want to help. And other times you're like, "Ooh, I get cookies. Yeah, sure. I'll help you bake." Right. I think those skills, are really what we need to do. And and yes, it was punishment. However, I will say that some of the summer schools that I helped facilitate, there were some that were project based and they were actually really interesting and really fun and really hands on. And we had the kids out in the creek trying to figure out how to get pollutants out of the creek and things like that. And they were creating actual usable, skimmers and absorbers and trying different experiments to figure that stuff out. And I think that's really important. But also, like I taught high school and the summer school for high school, we took the kids to local uh industries and things and did shadow days and like brought them in and had people explain what their job was because like when you ask someone what they want to be when they grow up, they go to like the big thing. I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a firefighter, I want to be a nurse, I want to be a doctor, I want to be this, right? But like, did you know that there's a job where you do, like you create, I don't know, a widget, like it's just like, and then they are like, "Oh, you can do that? That's a thing? Like, that's so cool." And I think that those programs, those summer school programs where we got the kids out into the community asking people questions or seeing what was available, like it didn't fit every kid, but it definitely helped some kids go, "Oh, the world isn't just these defined things. I can actually follow a passion. And like, if I enjoy drawing, I can learn how to 3D draw and create the widget, right?" And I think that those opportunities are really important, especially to, the situation we're in right now is like when we were growing up, like my dad was the breadwinner, my mom was a nurse, she pulled money in too, but they were home, you know what I mean? Like I wasn't left on my own. My parents didn't have to work to support a middle class lifestyle, both of them all the time, three jobs, whatever. And I think that's become more and more difficult. And the more difficult it becomes at home, economic wise, to own a home, to decide whether you're going to buy groceries and gas and, whatever it is you need to do, those things then the parents are experiencing a burnout as well, like they are struggling to survive and those things get put on the back burner as well. And it's not, I'm going to treat my kid terribly by not allowing them the experience of baking, but I'm just too exhausted and eggs are costing too much this month, so we're not going to play around in the kitchen with some situations like that. And so I think, all around, we've become a society where, it's not live and enjoy. It's live and struggle and make it to the next hurdle and hope that you have enough to provide enough for your family, that you have enough to give to not have to struggle all the time. And it just seems like that goalpost keeps moving further and further away from the generations coming up. And I think that plays into the other side of, yes, we've put the responsibility on educators to provide all these services, but think about the parents are working multiple jobs or are working really stressful, hard jobs, and just don't have the energy at the end of the day to sit down and read a book. Even just that, even asking them to do that is too much after dinner, after bath time, after, getting the kids ready for bed. They're just it's just a bridge too far. And even
Yeah.
like, families that are doing okay. My sister has two boys, but they play, you were talking about, sorry, I think to digress a little bit, but you were talking about like the distractions. It's not even the social media that's the distraction for them or the screen time. One of them plays hockey and the other one plays baseball, and it's not like baseball and hockey when I was growing up. It is like 24/7. I mean, my nephew has 3 hockey games this weekend between Saturday and Sunday. That's a lot of time and pressure on a kid, that doesn't really support other. I mean, it does have the teamwork and it does have the work ethic and things like that behind it, but it also is pulling the family apart because even at holidays, I don't get to see my nephews when I come up from North Carolina. They're just like so busy with sports. I get to see them on Christmas Day, and they'll have a tournament the day after Christmas, and they'll have a tournament on Christmas Eve, and they'll just not be around. And it's amazing to me that that's what's considered okay now, even for so all these distractions, whether it's socioeconomic distractions or sports and social media or video games or whatever people want to blame it on. And then, it's just everybody's tired. Everyone's so tired. So,
You know what, Emily?
Yeah.
I wonder. I find the excuse "I didn't have enough time" or "I don't have enough time" to be the lamest excuse in the world. You have all the time that you need to do whatever you want to do. It's all a matter of prioritization. What do you want? I'll just use myself. What do I want to do? I want to put food in my mouth. I make time for that every day without fail. I do not have a problem running out of time to shove things in my mouth. And so I wonder how much of what you just described is us choosing to be overstimulated, us choosing to have our children be overbusy. The first thing that popped into my mind is that, as you said, parents feel so overworked, parents feel so overwhelmed that sending their kid to soccer or an aftercare program, it's somewhat of a relief to some parents. Keeping their kids busy outside of the home may be even a relief to some parents because it gives them an extra few moments. But I wonder how much of this is societal and it's happened to us, and how much of this is us choosing.
Yeah, I think that's true to a certain extent, but also there's a different mindset for most parents. And what I mean by that, what I was thinking when Emily was talking about her nephews and what they were doing, I have nieces and nephews that have children, and those nieces and nephews' children are in everything the same way Emily made the description of her nephews. And it's a mindset. It's not just that the parents are being busy. They think that their child being in baseball, in hockey, football, all of that the AAU team that, that they are fully engulfed in during the summer is the proper way to help their child get scholarships, help their child potentially, we know that, it's 1% of students, athletes that become professionals at anything. That doesn't stop people from pretending that they're putting their child on the path of becoming a professional. So in the back of their minds, worst case scenario, my child may be able to go to college without having to pay. So I think that is also part of it too. It's not just we need to make them, do this busy thing, have you in sports for you to be busy. Now, to go back to what you said, David, yes, I think that there is something to be said for priorities, because people do tend to do the things that are important to them. And so I would say that in most cases, the fact that they have their children involved in these sports like that is important to them. And that's why they do it.
I'm going to push a little bit back, just briefly, in the sense of choice is a privilege. You get choice when you have the privilege to make a choice. Most of the children that I worked with in my career, families did not have the luxury of a choice. The choices that they were making were survival choices. They weren't, I want to do this or I want my kid. The other thing to balance that out is these sports are super expensive. There are no such things as like local town community leagues anymore. They just go straight. My nephew's little league 5-7 years ago, whatever it was, has a draft. Like, how do you draft a 7-year-old? Like that, like, what are you talking about? These parents are taking it way too seriously. But my biggest concern was you have students who can afford to pay $2,000 to play hockey for one season. And then you have families that can't make that choice. So even if their kid had talent, they can't play. There is no opportunity for them to play. Did you know at high schools don't get scouted anymore? You don't get scouted if you're the best football player on your football team or your basketball team. That you're not getting scouted like you used to get scouted, where those colleges would come and watch you. You have to send reels now. You have to go to outside camps. You have to pay for these extra leagues to be even considered for scholarships to play on college level teams, let alone, making it bigger than that. So I do think, yes, it's nice to have choice and to be able to prioritize things, but when you're trying to pay your bills and your job does not pay you a living wage, and you are struggling between healthcare and gas prices and groceries inflating and everything else, you're just full on exhausted. And I think that we need to realize that the gap between the ultra wealthy and the lower class or the poor is getting wider. The middle class is getting less existent, and those choices do not exist for people who are lower than upper middle class. So I just, as my soapbox, I'll step down now. Apologize. I don't apologize for what I said, but I mean, I just think that we need to be realistic about there are some choices and priorities that we can make for ourselves, but a majority of those are being made for us based on socioeconomic situations in this country currently.
If I were to piggyback on that, I would also say that, we can look at the fact that the summer break is coming up means that some households will not have that breakfast and that lunch meal
Mm-hmm.
that was provided by the school. And that is a reality. And right now there isn't really anything in place that, really can fill that. Certain communities, do provide some assistance, but there's not enough of resources being put to something like that. The next question is for students with IEPs, learning differences, or social emotional challenges, what does a supportive summer look like? And I'll start, and you guys can jump in. Um, I would encourage every parent whose child has an IEP not so much to necessarily do anything different than their child as much as possible. You advocation for your child and their IEP is something that needs to be ongoing, and that the summertime might be a time where you might be able to speak to someone who can be in the room with you when that next IEP is worked on. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to say about that. Panel?
I would say, I don't know that I would necessarily do something different. Um, just because child has an IEP, I would try to incorporate some of those same things that I would do with a student that doesn't have an IEP, that exploring piece, that hands-on piece. I've, you know, I have dual certification, so I have worked with students with who are special needs and have IEPs. And I tried my best to accommodate, yes, give them their accommodations and those things that they needed, but also, treat them as like we would treat our regular students. So I think them still having that piece of during the summer to explore and to do those hands-on is good for them as well.
Okay. All right. We've run out of time. So we're going to get to our last question. Carissa, define IEP before we move on.
Individual education plan. So it's
And
basically tailored for that particular students for their particular needs. So based off of what their disability may be. So it may be, whatever that disability may be, they have certain accommodations. There are certain skills and goals that they're working on throughout the year. Once they accomplish those goals, resetting goals for them to, keep them on track and have continuous learning.
the reason why I mentioned the advocacy is because the parent and the school team work together to provide that individual plan for that child. Each child has their own plan that's just for them, and the parents and the educational team, along with any advocates that the parents want present, all work together to provide the IEP for that child.
And I do
So
agree of having an advocate, especially if you don't know as a parent, finding someone who can advocate because that is very important.
absolutely. So we're down to our last question. We've run out of time, and I apologize to any of the questions that were not able to get answered tonight. What's the last word for educators and parents for the summer? And I'm going to start with Emily.
I guess my last word would be just encourage that wonder from the very earliest age to the oldest age. Like it gets harder, I won't lie. My nephews are now 17 and 13. And like getting them to do anything is, oh, it's going to be boring. I can't believe you're making me do this, yada. But if you come at it from like a, hey, like, can you help me with this thing? Or I want your opinion on and guide it in more of a like, we're partners in this, or I want your help with something, they tend to be a little more open to doing some of those things. So lead with that wonder.
Very cool, Auntie. All right. Carissa.
I would say I encourage the rest and also being creative and thinking outside the box. So, as we've said for the last, hour, thinking of ways to encourage learning besides just the traditional way.
Very cool. Thank you. Uh, Rabbi David Paskin, bring us home.
Be curious. Be curious. Look at the world around you. Ask a million questions. If you get an answer, ask more questions. Explore and just never. The word that Emily used was so perfect. Wonder. Just don't ever lose that wonder. And especially when you're not in school and you're not surrounded by other kids who encourage you to be curious. Moms and dads, we have to help our kids to stay curious.
Wow. Thank you, panel. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being here with me today. We want to thank all of our panel members so much for giving of their time to participate in this conversation with us tonight. And I am very happy with this conversation that we've had. And you can watch Conversation with Tony Mobley at our website, conversationwithtonymobley.com, as well as our YouTube channel, Conversations with Tony Mobley on YouTube. Conversation with Tony Mobley is produced by Claudia Lopez Waterman. Our current team includes Laura Thompson, Zachary Sorensen, Mickey McAture. Thank you, sir, and thank you, team. Thank you, Mimo Live. Thank you, Zoom, for making this broadcast possible. We have conversations with real people. Stay tuned for new episodes and great conversations. If you have time, we ask that you go back, look at some of our past conversations, over 200, and we think that you might find something that is helpful. We want to thank our panel again for being the people who they are and for being a part of our conversation today and for doing what you do. Next week, author of The Bashful Ladybug in Education, Connie Davidson, Dr. Connie Davidson, and our own Dr. John Idelson, Professor Emeritus of CSU Monterey Bay, will be talking with us about Dr. Davidson's book. So we're going to be having that conversation on next week. We ask that you continue to like and subscribe and comment on YouTube. You can support Conversations with Tony Mobley by donating your time, and financial donations are appreciated. We want to continue to get better. That's what we are striving for, and we want to continue to have quality conversations so that you can enrich your lives. There is nothing better than a great conversation. You don't necessarily have to agree, but having a good conversation can make the world go around. We're going to say good night. God bless you. See you soon. Take care.